You read the title. You know exactly what this video is. I disagree with Bransan the Magic Man. No one asked for my opinion, and I'm 18 years, almost 19 years late to the conversation. And I have two responses to those points. One, I was a small child when Sanderson wrote his Laws of Magic, and two, screw you, I do what I want. Before we get into it, let's quickly run through Sanderson's Laws of Magic, so everyone is on the same page. So first law, an author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. Second law, limitations are greater than powers. And third law, expand what you already have before you add something new. We're going to work through these in reverse order because I have thoughts on the first law and they're going to come out loudly. So to preserve my voice, we're starting with the quieter ones. So let's get started. Third law, expand what you already have before you add something new. Immediately, Brando Sando coming in strong with an aesthetic preference, because that's what this is. This is unambiguously an aesthetic preference. In his article on his third law, Sanderson says, "These are observations about what have made my own magic systems better in the way I like to design them. Therefore, they are laws I try to follow in my right..." Wait, what? What? Remember that in writing, nothing is absolute. I don't read a book and think to myself, I wonder how well this magic system follows Sanderson's laws. When I read, I'm there to enjoy the story. Well. Alright, case closed. Sanderson acknowledges that his laws are aesthetic preferences, and that's why he named them Sanderson's laws. Video over, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. I've heard way too many people parrot Sando's laws as absolutes to stop this fast. With his third law, Sanderson suggests that he likes to extrapolate and interconnect what already exists in his world rather than adding more. My last video before this one is actually a good example of this principle. In that little writing experiment, objects are imbued with magic using spell looms, and the story revolves around how spell looms are integral to many cultures and ways of life across that world, and information on spell looms is embedded in folklore. The world's magic is connected to its cultures and to the story's conflict rather than adding other disconnected systems. And it works. When you flatten multiple disparate systems into one broader, more general system, it reduces the cognitive load required to hold the systems in your mind simultaneously, which leaves more space in the story to add complexity to plot and character, deepen conflicts, and maybe even add more perspectives. So, what's wrong with it? Consider with me a story where the plot is built around cultural exchange and the irreconcilability of different ways of thinking. I think I'd want those cultures' magics to reflect their ways of thinking. So even if in my personal world-building notes they draw their magic from the same source, I'm not going to tell you that. I want these to look like two completely separate magic systems that don't interact in any way, because that ties into the theme of the story, that to cross between these cultures, you need to be willing to hold two irreconcilable frameworks in your mind simultaneously. Therefore, I'm intentionally going to add something new instead of expanding. As I said, it's an aesthetic preference. You've got to ask what works for the story you're telling. Is it better to have a fully interwoven system of magic, culture, philosophy, and politics, or does it make more sense to split things up? Okay. Second law, limitations are greater than powers, or resistance is greater than on switch, apparently. My blood pressure is already rising just reading that abominable butchering of two completely different notation systems. Omega is the symbol for resistance in electromagnetism, and the vertical line is just a ubiquitous placeholder for on in electronics. That they're not. You don't use those together. I hate everything about it. But anyway, Sanderson says that what makes Superman interesting are not his powers, but his weaknesses, which are kryptonite and his code of ethics? Brandon, what? This is such an unbelievably enormous misunderstanding of Superman as a character. Superman's morals are not a weakness. Imagine someone with immense power, so much that they could do absolutely anything. They could be as cruel and selfish as they want, and no one could stop them. Superman poses the question, but what if they didn't? What if you are enough? What if you don't have to crawl over other people to prove your own worth? Superman's morals are a strength. Sanderson correctly identifies that they came from Ma and Pa Kent, but then calls them a limitation. I would suggest the inverse. As Clark Kent, Superman trains his empathy every day to make it as strong as it can possibly be, the same way Batman trains to be a detective or Wonder Woman trains to be a warrior. Obviously, those aren't the only attributes of each hero. They all have various strengths, and empathy is one of them. Brando Sando is a writer. I know he knows that empathy is a strength, so I am confounded by his characterization of Superman's code of ethics as a limitation. What makes Superman interesting is that he has so much power that he could do anything without fear of consequences, and he chooses to be kind. Back to the point. In his essay on his second law, Sanderson advocates for setting yourself boundaries, both in your magic and more broadly in the story. You can't cross those boundaries because of some fundamental aspect of magic, or because of the norms and values and laws of the culture the story is set in, or maybe just because the character refuses to cross those lines. And I don't disagree with that. Though I think the framing as limitations are greater than powers is just dumb.
It's so dumb.
I would personally frame it differently. In improv, there's this idea of yes and. When you get handed a situation to work with or asked a question, you lean into it and take it further. It makes the improv more fun for you because you're immersing yourself in it, and it also makes the improv more fun for everyone else because you're giving them more to work with. Yes and is just great improv advice. So is no and. So you're asked a question or dropped into a situation and you say no. Maybe it's because you're uncomfortable, which is extremely valid. Or maybe you saw value in pivoting, or as Sanderson might appreciate, setting a boundary. Except you don't stop at no, hence the and. Let's look at both approaches to the same question. Will the hero go and comfort the crying child? Yes, she will, and she softens her voice. She drops down to her knees to be level with the child. She lets the child cry into her shoulder and makes sure they have somewhere safe to sleep that night and something filling to eat. Alternatively, will the hero go and comfort the crying child? No, she won't. And she gently pushes the child's older brother forward. He needs to do this. He needs this purpose to keep himself sane, and the child needs him to take charge and let them be a child. The hero doesn't step forward because she knows that in that moment, there's someone better for the job. Yes and? No and. Both are interesting. Both demonstrate character and can create, deepen, or resolve conflict. Both have a place in your story. It's your place to choose whether to say yes and or no and in any given situation. Limitations are not always more interesting. And now we come to the first law. An author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. At the most simplistic level, this is just inverse Chekhov's gun, where Chekhov said that if there's a gun in the story, someone should use it at some point. Sanderson says that if the gun is used to shoot the antagonist, we should know where the gun came from. I accept that. In most cases, that's pretty good writing advice. However, the rest of this essay deserves to be launched into the sun. Though it would actually be easier to launch it out of the solar system, since slowing down enough to get to the sun from Earth is a lot more effort than accelerating something to the solar system's escape velocity from the head start our orbit gives us. But that's beside the point. Bransan the Magic Man's essay on his first law contains perhaps the most harmful thing to ever beset modern fantasy, the hard-soft magic continuum. This language, hard for rigorous, well-defined systems, and soft for more pliant, inconsistent ones, this comes from academic politics. Specifically, it comes from scientists in physical and molecular fields who don't know what they're talking about. Now, I do know what I'm talking about, since I have a physics degree and a science communication degree. I've done research in both a supposed hard science and an apparently soft science. Reading Sanderson's Wikipedia page, I learned that he did 1 year of biochemistry at the beginning of his time at university, and I suspect that's where he picked up this language and internalized it. Buckle in, Brandon. You're in my house now. You see, this misunderstanding comes from the difference in research methods used in STEM fields versus those used in social science fields. In STEM fields, where the S for science is specifically referring to mathematical, physical, molecular, and biological sciences, we typically use deductive research methods. That's a sort of top-down approach where you propose a general hypothesis for how the system you're testing will behave, then you see if you can prove it wrong. Hypotheses that survive extensive testing become theories. In social science fields, including science communication, we often prefer inductive research methods, which is a bottom-up approach. For that, you start with a question rather than a prediction, and you gather data, which might be quantitative or qualitative. Then you look for patterns. Those patterns get assessed through statistical tests and various other rigorous methodologies. And once there's overwhelming data to support a particular pattern, theories are derived from it. Social scientists tend to hedge their research results a lot, because getting research participants is hard, so most papers are very specific about exactly what demographics they apply to and are careful not to generalize to the entire population. Both deductive and inductive research methods are rigorous, but they both look like hand-wavy nonsense if you don't understand the rationale behind them. And for the most part, people in STEM, well, they don't have to understand the methods used by social scientists. Deductive methods, in particular the scientific method, those are taught in high schools around the world, so everyone has at least passing familiarity with them. Inductive research methods are, at least in the English-speaking world, completely absent from most high school curricula, or if they are taught, it's done really, really badly. Sanderson has imitated this problem in his essay on his first law of magic. If you, as a reader, could write a hypothesis on a magic system, then it's hard. If you can't, then it's soft. Brando Sando doesn't mention Ursula K. Le Guin in any of his essays, but if he did, I imagine he'd characterize A Wizard of Earthsea's true name magic as soft, because wizards on Roke Island have to intimately experience the thing to learn its name, and then they use the name and can vaguely predict what's going to happen when they do. But it's still a bit of a crapshoot depending on their emotions. That's inductive research. That's literally inductive research. They ask themselves how they might control the thing, and then they gather data to find the answer and build their predictive models based on that information. That is inductive research. And let's consider Tolkien's Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, which Sanderson does specifically identify as having a soft magic system. The Hobbit is from the perspective of Bilbo Baggins, who does not understand magic. So through his interiority, we don't understand magic either. That doesn't stop Gandalf from getting the party out of trouble, or Bilbo from using the mysterious ring to get himself out of trouble. And we get a whole lot of interiority from various characters in Lord of the Rings as well, but never really from anyone who understands magic very well, so naturally, neither do we. That doesn't mean we're not going to throw the ring into the fires of Mount Doom. There's some magical reason it can only be destroyed where it was forged, and we don't fully understand why, but we know that's what we need to do, so we do it. The fact that we don't understand the magic doesn't mean we can't solve problems with it. The understanding just happens to come from characters whose interiorities we don't have access to. I don't doubt Sherlock Holmes when he busts out the latest forensic advancements. At least in modern adaptations that are true to the original books that were basically Victorian CSI. I don't understand them, but I know he's an expert, so I trust his judgment. Why can't the same go for an expert in magic? And more to the point, magic is not science. Magic has wonder and whimsy, and it does brilliant, ridiculous things. Sanderson's hard, soft language comes from ignorant academic politics where some people in STEM fields don't understand inductive research methods, so they create this false hard-soft hierarchy with them at the top without ever thinking about the implications. That is exactly what you did, Brandon, you absolute womble. You created a hierarchy and put yourself at the top without thinking about the implications, and now everyone talks about hard and soft magic as if those words are anything other than arbitrary rubbish recycled from ignorant academics. Characters can think about magic deductively, and that's okay. They can think about it inductively, and that's okay too. But you know what's not okay? A complete lack of wonder and whimsy. Which brings us to Sanderson's zeroth law. Always err on the side of what is awesome. You're damn right. Give me awe. Give me wonder. Don't give me thinly veiled hierarchy posing as legitimate writing advice. Okay. It's all out of my system now. Like Brando Sando acknowledged himself, his laws are just things that work well for him. Please stop treating them like they're actual laws. Also, like, comment, share, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. See you next time with hopefully less yelling.